All right, so check with your time. It is 3 minutes past the hour of 8, and this is Asaase Radio, 99.5 megahertz. The program is Candid Voice, and it's live here on Asaase Radio, 99.5 megahertz. My name is Wilberforce Asare, and today I sit in for your regular host, Benjamin Ofe-Addo, who is unable to be here today, and so I do this program for him. It promises to be an interesting one. Young people make up the largest segment of the population in Ghana and perhaps the entire African continent. And issues relating to this demographic have formed the subject of much discussion in relation to development strategies in recent years. Investing in the demographic dividend, which is the youthful generation, is said to be one of the key pillars for the advancing of development progress or processes geared towards achieving sustained equality. Some time back, the former Secretary General of the United Nations, the late Kofi Annan, said that young people should be at the forefront of global change and innovation. Empowered, they can be key agents for development and peace. If, however, they are left on society margins, all of us will be impoverished. Let us ensure that all young people have every opportunity to participate fully in the lives of their society. And that's, unquote, Kofi Annan, the former Secretary General of the United Nations. So on the basis of this, today we choose to talk about youth empowerment and youth development amidst 21st century trends and challenges. And my guest this evening, I should say, is AMOS Kevin-ANNAN. He's a healthy home advocate, and he is virtually a household name when you talk about issues concerning the youth. So a very good evening to you, Amos.
Good evening, Wilberforce. Thank you for having me in your wonderful studio.
You're most welcome, and we are glad you like it here.
Oh, it is really fascinating what you guys have done here. I've been to many studios, but this is something else.
Thank you very much indeed. And so that's AMOS Kevin-ANNAN. He's a healthy home advocate, and he's going to be helping us in dealing with this particular subject. He himself is very passionate about the youth. But before I come to you, Amos, President Akufo-Addo, sometime in 2019, probably about 2 years ago, because it was Friday, the 29th of March, 2019. Actually, it was his birthday. He was speaking at the Harvard University under the auspices of the Harvard Kennedy School's Institute of Politics and Harvard University Center for African Studies. It was a public lecture, and it was themed Empowering the Youth, Africa's Golden Future. So let's take a quick listen to what President Akufo-Addo said shortly, and we will situate this discussion.
There's a critical need to involve young people in decisions that affect them. We cannot talk about sustainable development without the active involvement of youth. The former United Nations Secretary General Ban Ki-moon argues that when we give young people decent jobs, political weight, negotiating muscle, and real influence in our world, they'll create a brighter future. Hence, Africa cannot talk about shaping the future without talking about the welfare and well-being of young people. It is important that Africa take these ideas forward to harness the value of a youthful population, holding human rights, gender equality, development of human capital, and dignity at the center of all of our investments. Only by providing opportunities that open the future to all young people do we create a brighter future. The median age in Ghana is 19 and a half years. Hence the overriding importance of democratic consolidation in Africa. Post-colonial authoritarian rule failed the African peoples. It continued the impoverishment of our people, which is the consequence of colonialism and imperialism. As a result, A new paradigm shift is being undertaken to guide the transformation of poor agrarian economies into value-adding industrialized economies on the basis of democratic values and institutions. Africa is indeed attempting something novel in human history. We're trying to use the instruments of democracy to propel societies from poverty to prosperity. There's a critical need to involve young people in decisions that affect them. We cannot talk about sustainable development without the active involvement of youth. The former United Nations Secretary General Ban Ki-moon argues that when we give young people decent jobs, political weight, negotiating muscle, and real influence in our world, they'll create a brighter future. Hence, Africa cannot talk about shaping the future without talking about the welfare and well-being of young people.
All right, so that's President Akufo-Addo there. He was speaking at a Harvard seminar in the United States, particularly in Boston. So let me come to you, Uncle Kevin. I hope I can call you Uncle Kevin.
Whatever you find it comfortable.
And that's because of the relationship we have had in the past. I mean, I've known Uncle Kevin for God knows how long. All right.
It's a delight to be seeing what the grace of God and your skills acquired is doing for our motherland. And I think that I also want to seize this opportunity to commend you for your consistency, because I've known you in other places other than here. And so it's a delight to see where the Lord has brought you thus far.
I thank you. I thank you very much indeed. So I see that you've started some social media campaign. I see that it is a hashtag I resolve.
I resolve.
And the latest one is I resolve to promote youth. What's it about?
Well, I mean, I've spent 31 years. December 10th will be 31 years since I started working with young people. And it's important, anyone who wants to have a conversation around youth, to appreciate that young people are not a homogeneous group. They are heterogeneous in their diversity. They come in different expressions and categories. And so I have learned quite a lot in relating with young people. And you can either see them as a field to plow for the future, or you see them as a force to be deployed for the future. And for me, these two concepts are very important. Are they a field to be plowed and exploited and used for your own ends, most of which tend to be very selfish? And I like what the president said. He used the word harnessing the potentials of the youth. Young people have so much energy, so much strength, so much prospects, that failure to harness those, it becomes counterproductive for any community and any family. So there's a need for us to identify the various categories of young people. Some are in the rural areas, some are in the peri-urban, others are in the urban, others are in cosmopolitan setting. And these young people all require different set skills for empowerment and development. So it is crucial. And I'm perpetually hinged onto young people. I always call myself a person who is having a lifetime calling to the youth. And I connect with them very easily without any let or hindrance. Some have the notion that when you hang around youngsters, they will take you for granted. But if you're an adult and you carry yourself well, I don't need to dress like youth for youth connect with me. I need to have a heart of young people, and you can develop that. You have a heart and a head that cognitively processes young people as a priority to you. And then you have a heart that connects with them. So your choice of words, your attitude, the values you express, all those things, young people are very critical about these things. And where it is that you show a double face, any tendency of hypocrisy, young people avoid you. And so they're looking for consistency.
Yeah.
And I'm delighted that they've helped me to stay consistent over 31 years.
Absolutely. And I remember a lot of engagements and all that. But let's situate our discussion, which is around youth empowerment.
Yeah.
So when we talk about youth empowerment, it's certainly a broad concept.
It is.
But what would you narrow youth empowerment to mean in the context of Ghanaian African development as we have it?
You know, I like something that happened in 2016. The ASPAN, there's the ASPAN group, and they had this conversation with different schools. It was a challenge they put out, and in that conversation, they gave a very simple definition of youth empowerment, which I would crave your indulgence to read. And this is how they put it. And these are the things that constitute the empowerment that we're looking for. When youth are empowered, they have the skills, critical awareness, and opportunities to positively impact their own lives and the lives of individuals, organizations, and communities, end of quote. Now, it's important when we are talking about empowerment to distinguish empowerment from tokenism. Sometimes young people are brought to the table when decision-making is being constructed or carved, but they're just brought there to represent something. So their views are actually not heard, and their values are not upheld. Now, the worth of a young person plus their voice is what will make the determination whether or not they are empowered. And the empowerment, first and foremost, must be beneficial to them as individuals. Secondly, to the communities they are part of or the groups they find themselves related to, i.e., whether in the workplace, whether in the school setting, whether in the nation, broadly speaking. So an empowered young person is a young person who has the skills, the tools, and the wherewithal to make decisions, choices that are helpful for their community and for themselves. It's so important.
Well, so yes, I know that in our country particularly, there have been several initiatives, particularly under the Fourth Republican Constitution, which is targeted at helping the youth to develop. There's been GIDA, there's been NYEP or NY. So many of them. I don't want to paraphrase. Even in the political front, you would see that the political parties have institutions right at the university level. There's TESCON for the NPP. There is TAIN for the NDC and all that. Would you say that our country has situated youth empowerment properly as it should be? Or you think there's a bit more work that needs to be done as a country?
I'm not one of those who joined the lamenting choir, because a lot has been done over the years. If you look at the revolution period, for instance, in the heat of the revolution, an anthem came, "Arise, Ghana Youth, for your country." It was very, very popular around that time. It may precede that, but it was at the height of the revolution that it was used to canvass and rally the young people. And a line says, "The nation demands your devotion." Now, Ghana as a nation, independent, post-colonial era, has done a lot for the young people. But the question would be, has it been sufficient? Is that all we could have done? I would say it hasn't been sufficient. We've done what we could as a nation, but that has not been sufficient enough. So there's more room for improvement, it is said. So I would say that we still have a lot to do for our young people, because if you look at opening up educational prospects for young people, it is one of the biggest tools of empowerment of young people, to help them to be able to take critical decisions, make choices, and appreciate the changing context in which they find themselves, and creatively connect and respond to the demands of their time. And education is one of the tools that you can use.
Yeah, so I was going to come there to the subject of thematic areas that you think are important when it comes to the concept of empowerment. Like you mentioned, education. There may be others, maybe some would say entrepreneurial empowerment, or of course we've mentioned education, technological, social. So what are the main thematic areas that you think, when it comes to empowering the youth, we need to have in place to act as a springboard for the empowerment purposes?
I mean, the first thing I will mention is the concept of identity, who the young people are. Because you see, if you lose your identity and you go to the global table, you would miss out. Because those who are coming know who they are, they know the values that undergird their choices and decisions, and they are determined to live or die for those things. That's conviction. Mm-hmm. So at the heart of patriotism, voluntarism, and a sense of nationalistic character, an individual must know who they are. It's so important. So that's the first empowering tool we can give to our young people. So our national identity. Unfortunately, we don't have a national language. My dealings in East Africa made me understand that in East Africa, majority Swahili-speaking countries, if you could speak English so well and yet could not speak a mother tongue, you are an illiterate. Mm-hmm. And that's something that is striking. So there's a need for us to also help our people not to become tribalistic or ethnic bigots, as is used in popular literature, but to be driven by the nation and the nation's interest. That's very, very important. The second thing is the education, of course, which is another thing that gives young people leverage. So an uneducated bunch of young people, they are a lethal weapon that can be manipulated like puppets for anybody who is seeking to be an agent provocateur against the state. So there's a need for us to encourage. That's why I fully endorse the free senior high school concept, because I think that we can look at the things that are not going well with the concept. But broadly, I am of the view that it's better to educate a young person than not educate them at all. Half education is even better than no education, no matter what it is. You can have all the arguments you have, but I'd rather have one who is literate, who can read and write, and be able to communicate clearly, than one who is helpless and hopeless when it comes to these things. Because at the global stage, those people won't find any space there, Now, the third one would be the decision-making processes and how the young people are involved. I heard the president talk about the involvement of youth when he was quoting Ban Ki-moon, the UN Secretary General. And this must be all matters concerning the youth, the voice, the views of young people ought to be held up. You need to uphold that because they must be seen as sacred. You are discussing about them. You're taking decisions about them. It's important to bring them around and hear what they have to say. Hitherto when I'm invited to speak to a group, they give you a topic and you go and speak. But I ask them, what are you actually looking for? I tease out the expectations. And on the basis of the expectations, sometimes I'll ask them, do you have any peculiar reasons other than just the theme coming up as a popular, trendy story? And then they'll say, oh, yeah, we've had these issues amongst us. So then you situate your presentation, your communication within the context where it becomes scratching where they itch. Many of the policies sometimes are from the top down. Adults sit at the place and they determine that, when we were young, we didn't have these things, and therefore, now that we've become older people, these are the things the young people will need. And we give it to them. But sometimes it doesn't work that way. My work in NGO, today they want to be called different names, but those days we were using NGOs, taught us that people may have needs, but they also have felt needs. And it's important to actually respond to the felt needs of the people. Otherwise, you go and put a project there, and the project will not live, to be useful to these people. It's important the same way we involve young people. And there's a ladder of participation, which was developed in the 70s. It's a very interesting one. When you look at the ladder, it shows you how we can patronize people or use tokenism to bring people into a meeting, and yet we won't take seriously the things they say. And for me, that should not be the pattern in a nation that wants to empower the young people. The other area we've got to look at is socioeconomic capacity, the ability to live within the community and be human beings. I like something I learned when I was in East Africa once. They said a human being is a human being because of other human beings.
Please say that again.
A human being is a human being because of other human beings.
Okay.
Now, this whole concept of individuation, where people move out of the orbit and form a new satellite of their own and think they don't need others to be able to thrive, is scary. It's detrimental to the building of both community and country. And it's therefore something we need to drum home in the hearts and the minds of the young people, that we need each other to be able to thrive. You look at it, anytime there is an outbreak of any communicable disease or any pandemic as we have it now, we rally everybody around. Our forebears told us it takes a village to raise a child. That means that the ability of a child to survive and then move from survival to thriving is hinged on community care and support. When somebody has been affected by HIV or living with AIDS, it's a community support that we rally. So it means that indeed Ubuntu, as the South Africans will say, is important, that sense of community. And we seem to be doing everything that undermines community. Young people need that to feel empowered. I visited the Hector Peterson Museum in South Africa, which was in the heat of the apartheid, and when the young people went on the street and protested the use of Afrikaans as the main medium of instruction in school. And they built a facility, beautiful, in memory of Hector. And they call it in honor of the youth. And I always say to congregations when I speak to them, a youthless congregation will soon become a useless congregation. Now, so it is that a youthless nation will soon become a useless nation.
Maybe that's why the Bible says that blessed is the man whose quiver is full of them.
And when he meets his enemies at the gate, he will not be brought to shame.
Absolutely.
But the reverse is also very scary. Where the youth are not properly tooled, equipped, resourced, and released right, they become a misery, a shame, a shock, and display of all kinds of behavior that will be untoward. So there's a need for us to also socioeconomically empower young people. And within our cultural milieu, we have different expressions, different language, different value systems. Let us not destroy our values. Let's not destroy our culture. And I see the Japanese, JICA, they bring their young people and they come, when they go to the presidency, you watch them. They manifestly show Japanese tendencies because the Japanese have something they call ikageya. And this ikagaya is something they teach their young people, and the values are deep, overforce. I've been studying that, and I'm amazed how consistently batches of Japanese students and, persons who come as volunteers to serve our nation, they exhibit same, because they are ambassadors of Japan. Do we have young people who also see themselves as ambassadors of Ghana? I think we need that. We see more people sectarian attachments, where I'm an ambassador of NDC or MPP or a Christian group or a Muslim group. Are we seeing ourselves as persons who stand for Ghana? My best experience of nationhood was when I went to Israel. And you could see the young people, they are really committed to their nation. Very, very passionate. And I visited the Vadiashem Holocaust Museum. And a German essayist has put a statement there. He says, a nation is not only what it believes, but what it tolerates. So we should ask ourselves, is it just the things our young people believe, or what are the things they are making allowances for? What are the things they are accommodating? Are they accommodating the intemperate use of language? Somebody and another are having a conversation, and all of a sudden he says things in Twi, or he says it in Ghana. Why are people so prone to the use of intemperate language and incendiary comments. So our young people, socioculturally, should understand that they have a duty, a stake in ensuring that the nation is built well. I remember when the Liberal Democrats had a conference at the University of Ghana, Professor Ajiman at that time, I was invited to address them. And my track was titled Youth as Perpetrators of Violence and Youth as Victims of Violence. And many times, many young people are mobilized socioculturally to do hatchet work. And he said that the devil finds work for the idle hand. Why are young people so prone to being used for hatchet jobs? It doesn't matter the shade or form of the individuals who mobilize them. So socioculturally, we need the tools, the empowering skills for our young people to be able to make decisions and choices that will not be inimical to the state.
Okay. All right. So if you just tune in, and this is Asaase Radio, and the program is Candid Voice. And my guest today is AMOS Kevin-ANNAN. He's a healthy home advocate and also a youth champion, but according to me. He's a youth champion. And so it's interesting that you talk about Japan and also situated to the concept of which is the decision-making process. I had the opportunity to go to Japan for 10 days.
Okay.
And it was a TICAD conference. And I noticed that, in fact, I left there with the impression that these people are a group of uncompromising people in the world. I had never seen people like that before. And something that I noticed in the TICAD conference, TICAD is this, it has all these African countries and all that. So for every African team, they had assigned to the team a young person. For us, the Ghana team, the lady who was assigned to us was about 22 years old. And she was this intelligent and ready to assist our Minister for Foreign Affairs and everything. All the team go through the entire processes, was going everywhere with us. And I found it as very participatory. And I come to this point where it looks like it's probably for me, maybe the most important point that has been made, which has to do with the participation or the involvement of young people in the activities that we do in our country, which is a medium of empowering them. How do we get this concept properly accepted in our way of doing things as a country?
It's important first and foremost to acknowledge the human value of the person called youth. Like I said, others see them as a force, others see them as a field. So those who see them as a field would only plow them, harvest the goodies that are planted on that soil. But those who see them as a force harness the potentials. You see, when you're dealing with young people, you can either see their potential or see their problems. And whenever you see them as a problem, it means you need cure. But when you see them as a potential, you then have to harness those potentials and deploy them appropriately. And this is where things like what they are interested in, what their passions are, those things are very important for young people. Gone were the days where persons who go to school and parents will say, we don't have a doctor in our family and therefore you necessarily must be a doctor, so that you feel our status, vacuum. But now we are looking at what the young people are good at, they are passionate about, and they are less stressed when they are pursuing those endeavors. And that's what we are doing. I've spent time with university students, helping them to choose their programs and stuff like that. And you can see some of them took courses, second year, they want to change. Because they don't have an interest in that. And when you don't have an interest in something, your energy levels to pursue same with passion also dwindles. So I would recommend strongly, it's at the heart of parenting. Unfortunately, very little is said about parenting in this country. But parenting was a very serious endeavor years gone by, because the home is actually the womb that births the persons in society. So the habits that are exhibited in society are nurtured in the hearts of the people in the home. When our homes are falling apart, as a nation, we can't sit back and watch. because the prospects are grim. There's a need for us to go back to the home and look at what we are doing to our homes. Do the homes have the support they need to be able to raise confident, convinced young people who would contribute to the welfare of the state? When you look at Indians, for instance, look at Lebanese, look at the Japanese we are talking about, you can see that family is a very important issue.
Extremely important.
Extremely important. But here we are, many of us and our young people are actually avoiding family. And we are taking to ourselves certain values that are actually destructive to the well-being of family. And as a family advocate, I'm very, very passionate about the issue of family because I see the power of stability that comes into a young person when they have family backbone. And when young people don't have family backbone, they struggle. Now they have to take to certain habits that may be deficient, that may be malfunctioning lifestyles or maladaptive behaviors, that now society needs to spend hundreds, if not thousands and millions of resources to cure. Whereas if we are taking the proactive measure of empowering those producing the children, they would have done a lot more work than what the society can do. One of my favorite authors, George Herbert, he says, a father is more than 1,000 teachers. The value of a father is more than 1,000 teachers. And so we should go back and look, what are the kind of mothers we're having right now? What are the kind of fathers we're having right now? And what offsprings are they reproducing? Whether it's a single parent home or dual parent home is not the issue. What kind of parents do we have? And Asaase, we've got to look at that. If we really want our Asaase to be preserved. Because as the parents go, so would the children go.
Very interesting thoughts there being shared by my guest today for Candid Voice, AMOS Kevin-ANNAN. You know, the concept about parenting and everything, very important. You talked about the Lebanese and all that. I noticed that the Jews have a concept where it looks like almost all their institutions that they find or they establish, they name it after themselves and their sons. So you would see a Lebanese company or a Jewish company that has the name of the father and then it says and sons. Exactly. So I know about like Mahato Demat and Sons. I know about several other organizations and Sons. Is it a concept of saying that, look, we are thinking generationally and that we are empowering our offspring immediately they are born so that they are part of the companies that we have established for purposes of development? This is something that we should look at as a country.
I think we've got to look at it. And our young people appear to be in a hurry. That's also another big trouble. They're in a hurry to set up things of their own when they haven't gone through the rudiment or the processes of formation. So they are skipping certain vital developmental areas. And they're going to set up something. It will have the hype, but it doesn't have the roots to survive the turbulence. So when you watch these persons we are mentioning, when the father set up business, the young people, their children, actually apprentice them over a period of time. And then, not all cases do, I must add, in majority of cases, they transit smoothly and establish another company that may be providing different services other than what the father is doing. In few instances, or the mother is doing. In few instances, they may be similar, but they will be located in different communities or locations. And they still work together. That kind of support nurturing, like the kangaroo. I mean, when we were children, we used to watch Skippy. Skippy was an Australian, TV series. And the kangaroo carried its little one in the front. It nurtured it. The eagle does the same. It trains its eaglets before they are released to hunt for themselves. So there's a need for us as also adults and as parents, as Ghanaians, to have a certain culture where we form people, we nurture people, we groom people. And when we release them, like arrows, as you quoted, they hit the target. And the thing with arrows is this. I learned it a few years back when I was working in youth ministry in the active sense of it. The arrow and the warrior are important in the shooting of the arrow. The warrior has his bow and he has his arrow. So you've got to have sufficient muscular strength to be able to tensely move the bow, the string on the bow. And that capacity to string it is key.
Yeah, very key.
And the one who is a warrior, i.e. the adults of this country, who are the warriors who want to release our young people, as the president is suggesting, to ensure that there's sustainable development. The idea is sustainable development. So you're talking about continuity, consistency. You see, and when you release it like that, you must have a focus. So what is our focus? These are the development landmarks or guideposts we're talking about. So is it education? Is it career? Is it judiciary we are looking at? Which area? What is it at all we want to release our young people into? Those are crucial. Then also, not just that, the tip of the arrow we are shooting must be pungent and sharp enough to stay on target. Because I've seen people shoot an arrow, it hits the target all right, but it drops.
It drops down.
Some of the arrows are not strong enough. They hit and they break. Some of it, by the time you release it, it falls away because it's too light. So there's a need for us to have all these kinds of things. It may sound philosophical, but that is the way to go. We need to interrogate the things we are bringing as interventions for the young people. Sometimes the persons who are the drivers of those initiatives have done a great disservice to the young people. They haven't given them fully what the young people deserve or they need to be able to make the progress to the next stage. And sometimes some of our old folks, they have a certain mindset that says, when you teach the young person all there is to be known, they'll become arrogant. Mm-hmm. So like the master tradesman, whether it's a carpenter, a cobbler, or a dressmaker or anybody, when the apprentices are with them, they teach them many things, but they reserve certain things. That mindset is not a good orientation. It's not a good orientation. It is important that we begin to look at the specific target areas, and enough documentation abounds. I mean, we have the National Youth Policy. Mm-hmm. It's regrettable that we still have not paid too much attention to the deliverables therein in that document. And I pray that this turn of the president, the next 4 years, attention will be given to that. And those are the helms of national youth policy dialogue and decision-making. Would rope everybody in, because let's build a nation. We are not building something just for ourselves. We are building for the years to come.
Mm-hmm. All right, so I wanted us to, we'll talk about the challenges of the youth, getting to the latter part of this and how to deal with those challenges. But to zero in on education, we've seen that, of course, this particular government now we have in our country has says that education is free up to the SHS level. But looking at the trend education is taking, do you foresee that? Of course, we've established that it's a very important factor. It's one of the factors that you mentioned. But do you foresee education ultimately becoming free up to the university level? What's your thoughts on that, on the education and its importance to youth development?
Well, I mean, if you look at the Nordic and the Scandinavian blocks, education is free. I did some work there as well. And you see how beneficial it has been to the society. When you have a highly literate society, it's good. Of course, there's not enough for everybody in terms of job in the public sector. So that means that private initiatives will require creativity, innovation, and the deployment of technology. And now we are going to digital in many, many areas. And it's heartwarming to go online to see how many young people are having on the side businesses online. Many of the older folks are hesitant going there. But the young people, because they are driven by technology, innovation, curiosity, adventure, and all that, they are able to go there. Let's encourage more young people, not to be laid back and not just expect government to employ them. So education, yes, I know what the policy is at the tertiary level now, which is that the previous era where you needed a guarantor for loans, for instance, is going to be a thing of the past. And that's a very, very important intervention for the young people to pursue education with peace of mind. Now, my only worry is that do they actually value the money that is in their hands? Because when you look at the UNESCO, the 4 pillars of education, you notice that it is not just the read-write thing. No. You also, at the last part, they say learn to live with others in society. So how are young people learning to live life? Because that's really, really crucial. Theodore Roosevelt said that to educate a person in mind and not in morals is to educate a menace to society. So, yes, we can have a huge chunk of our persons literate, competent, with all the set skills. But the question is, do they have those ethical boundaries, those ethical limitations, those moral mores that will guide them so that they won't be crafty, educated thieves? And those are sophisticated persons, because if a person is highly educated and has moral deficiencies or ethical, deficiencies, they become a danger to society. So the education, yes, but what moral foundations are we inculcating in them? And we tend as a country to be highly religious. Sloganeering is a big one. We always have terms that we use. But do we actually internalize those things and make it our own when nobody is watching us? For me, that's a critical thing. Many of us will obey the traffic indicators when there's a camera, when there's a police officer. Ask yourself, where in the world would you find a traffic intersection working with the lights moving
and
there's a policeman there? It's needless. So what we're actually doing is that we're actually wasting our police force who already had hit with the numbers. They are very few. They're in terms of what is acceptable, we are nowhere near there. And yet, because we, citizens, are not conformist and not compliant, we create a problem by getting these police officers to stand there and to regulate our behavior.
In fact, some of them even hide so that they can arrest those who will disobey the traffic light.
Yes.
So they'll hide in some corner and wait for you to disobey and arrest you.
And we are quick to pacify them with pacifiers. So in those days, it used to be a booklet. The license was a booklet. So you stuff it in and then just give it to them and they sneak it. And people have become very disingenuous in doing these things. My wife and I went to Rwanda just before the first lockdown in 2020. When we arrived, then there was a lockdown in Ghana. And we had a conversation with this guy, and my wife asked him, Chief, what will happen to a person who drops a letter on the floor? Do you know what his response? Nobody would ever think of doing that. So it means that the nation has owned the thing. This is where it breaks my heart. There was a hullabaloo, huge frenzy and uproar, burning of ties, destruction of properties on the Medina-Adenta stretch. These footbridges had not been constructed. People went on demonstration. Elites led it. It breaks my heart, Wilberforce, that when it was constructed, people say it is too long. Now, I just don't get it. Now, when there was a soldier who went there some time back to try and reinforce and enforce people's usage of the facility. And people were complaining. Why are we such a complaining nation?
Today, my bishop said that we've been talking down our country as a people. And it's one of the statements he made when he was preaching today.
One of my late spiritual fathers calls it crabology. Whilst we're rising, like the crabs in the cage or in the net or basket, they pull each other down. That's basically what we do. And I tell you, I was telling some of my friends when I came from Rwanda, I see Rwanda as a rural country, if you compare to Ghana. It's a beautiful place. It's a very nice country and all that. But when you look at our level of development, infrastructure-wise and all that, I mean, we are way ahead. And when they mention Ghana, they do so with such reverence. And yet, when I arrived at the airport, some people were saying that some Chinese people and some other citizens passed through the airport without observing protocols. Meanwhile, I just walked through the airport and there was full compliance. So I called a producer of one network that was broadcasting, and I said, "Where did you get that information?" So somebody sent it to, and I said, "Have you verified it?" We are in a vulgar haste to put things out that disparages our nation. But others don't do that. And it is the citizens who own the decision to ensure that the nation works. I hear people say, if I don't litter this place, what work would Zoom Lion do? Is that the mindset? And look, contrast that with the mindset in Rwanda, where the gentleman says to us, no citizen would ever want to do that.
It's unthinkable.
It's unthinkable. So it's an abnormality if a Rwandese would put that down.
And it is the youth of our country who can bring that change.
The youth can bring the critical change because they have the numbers. Because the young people, I mean, a lot of the times I hear a lot of people say, the numbers, the adult suffrage, it's the young people who constitute the majority.
Yeah. Even in the last voters register that we did, about 55% of those who registered are considered young.
They are actually larger than the women constituency.
Yeah.
But you see, they are in a state of inertia. And they are looking forward to a benefactor. Somebody needs to awaken their consciousness and bring to their awareness that you constitute the majority. That's why nearly every business enterprise that wants the future seeks to capture the youth. When you capture the youth and the children, you have the future. And I always caution the young people, you are not the future leaders. You are actually leaders now and will be part leaders in the future, because the real future are the children. Mm-hmm. And when a nation has the mindset, the orientation that the youth are the future, we do ourselves a great disservice, because the young people are waiting for their turn, when right now is their turn. You have 19-year-olds doing all kinds of things. Look like Farida. I mean, that young lady, awesome. I remember like some 10 years ago, we did a presentation at British Council with Dr. Yapebi's group, Heart Group. Mm-hmm. And she was there. And when she stood there, she said, you people look at me and you are pitying me, but I pity all of you. And when she started speaking, it was such an awakening to the people in the audience. Because we have largely a young community that are in a state of inertia. They are not taking chances. They are not daring enough. And if they dare at all, they dare on the wrong side of life by showing how brave they are to destroy stuff. Mm-hmm. So if somebody wants to burn down a house, mobilize some young people. Look at these motor riders in this country. Majority are young people.
Yeah.
And look at the numbers that are having their legs amputated. It is the indiscipline in the state. But again, when you go to Rwanda, the level of compliance in the use of motor bicycles is amazing. It's amazing. And when you look at the way they move, and when the traffic is on, they are all at a standstill.
Not finding their way around.
No, they don't maneuver, do anything. No. And they are in Ghana, they are damaging people's side mirrors and all those things. And they run.
Well, so as we prepare to wrap up this conversation, I'll just take your mind to the issues of demonstrations that have rocked perhaps the African continent over the last decade. You know, the Arab Spring started in our continent. In recent time, there have been youth demonstrations in Nigeria about so many things. Recently in Senegal, there is a huge uproar, and all of it are fueled by the youth here in our country. You talked about the Medina incident and all that. So just to situate this to the challenges that are bedeviling the youth of our world now, how do we juxtapose this developments when it comes to agitations as against the challenges the youth are facing, and what needs to be done about them? I need you to address that.
I think we need a community that understands that dialogue is a very important part of our coexistence. Now, the young people should also understand that we've moved from the era where brawn is what you exhibit to the level where we use brains, shifting from brawn and its expressions to the place where we manifestly show we are brainy enough to have a conversation as matured persons. David Cameron, when he was in the UK at the helm of affairs, made a very profound statement when there was the torching of shops and buildings across Ireland, Scotland, and the United Kingdom in general. And he said a profound thing. He says, we have taught our young people their rights. It is now time to teach them their responsibilities. Mm-hmm. Oftentimes, we have so much on rights and rights and rights and rights and rights. But in our Constitution, there is a segment that deals with the citizens' responsibilities. I think that your network must take it up as a project. The citizens' responsibilities. I remember when the current president took office, he said, let us not be spectators, but let's be citizens. And to be citizens, the citizens' code is in the Constitution. So we need to help our young people to understand that not only do you have rights, but you also have responsibilities. And where you renege on your responsibilities, you actually vitiate your rights. Yeah. So you cannot renege on your responsibilities and seek to hold on to your rights or assert your rights. It's not done anywhere in the world. So our young people should understand that. And that's why anytime I hear them on the radio and on some of the networks talk, a lot of heat is generated. And don't turn yourself into a puppet. If you as a young person reduce yourself into a puppet to be stringed about and manipulated by unseen hands and faceless individuals who don't have the heart of the nation in place, but they have their personal parochial interests being pursued, you would end up destroying what should be a beautiful country. I have had countless friends walk into this nation and they said, this is a beautiful country. I have people who want to relocate here in the past. And go to Everett, go to the mountains area. You see a lot of persons who have relocated. If our nation was that bad, our neighbors will not bring their children here for schooling. We say our educational system is completely shattered. And yet, those who say they have good educational systems are bringing their children and young people here. I've sat with countless parents from different West African countries because of the university where I used to work. And they will tell me the dangers their young people face. In the West, pre-tertiary school, people are carrying knives and metal stuff, and so they are scanning them and ensuring that everybody is safe. We're not having gun-toting young people in this country. We don't have that. We have our version, which is different, and we need to find a way of managing it. So we are largely a country that cannot be complacent, yes, but we cannot also be complaining. And we need to inculcate that in our young people.
Obviously, there's a lot more to talk about with Uncle AMOS KEVIN-ANNAN. Perhaps let me just give you this little bit of time left to wrap up on this whole thing. So looking at all that we have discussed today, which essentially is about finding ways in which we can empower our youth amidst all the 21st century trends and challenges, what would be that message that you would send to that young person listening to you right now and asking questions about his quest to make a difference in his world?
Well, it's important first and foremost to know who you are. That's the first thing. The second thing is to develop a mission statement for yourself as a young person. Because you see, your mission statement would capture the essence of your existence. Now, secondly, set goals for your life as a young person. Pursue those goals. Look at who can come into your life to add qualitatively to your life and not distract or detract from where you are heading towards. A lot of young people need that. And you must be thankful that you were born in Ghana. It's not a mistake that you were born in this part of the world. I've seen students from other nations come here and they see business opportunities. And yet I'm sitting with my young Ghanaian friends and they don't see business opportunities. I know people who came and level 100, they established a business. when they were exiting campus at 400 for undergrad studies, they have a thriving business for 3 years. Whereas my young Ghanaian friends are lamenting no job opportunity. So I want to encourage the young people who are listening and watching. There's enough for everybody. Let's not have this zero-sum mindset. Let us learn the skills for living. Let us be patriotic. And where it is that you don't have opportunities for job employment, volunteer your services. Learn on the job, acquire the skills, add it to your credentials, and it will give you leverage.
So that's AMOS KEVIN-ANNAN. He's a healthy home advocate and also a youth champion. And I have actually been learning so many things. I think this conversation should continue beyond 1 hour. But however it is, we have to end. But this is a sure sign that AMOS KEVIN-ANNAN will certainly have to come back to this station, probably not on Candid Voice, but an opportunity where he can probably have a lot more time, maybe a morning show or something, where he can talk about this thing. I have learned something which I think is very important, and that is the fact that he says, as young people, we have rights, but we also have responsibilities. That for me is profound. It's going to guide my conversations going forward. I want to thank you very much, Uncle Amos, for joining us. Yes. So AMOS KEVIN-ANNAN is a healthy home advocate. Like I said, he's also a youth champion. And I know he belongs to the Church of Pentecost, the Almighty Church of Pentecost. I don't think they'll joke with you, crowd.
Oh, there's one Almighty.
I know, right?
Every other one is mighty.
It's mighty.
Well, I attend church at Pentecost,
yes.
but I am for the global church.
Yes.
My work takes me to other denominations.
And I remember more than 15 or so years ago, you attended camp meetings in our church.
Victory Bible Church.
Yes. So the tale, is a very long one.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So thank you guys for joining us here on Candid Voice. My name is Wilberforce Asaase. I thank you very much indeed for the courtesy of your company.
Thank you for having me.